Welcome back, and thank you for staying with us on the conversation. Well, we still have Maurice Carney with us speaking on the delegation of the Congolese government and also Rwandan-backed M23 rebels meeting in Doha to engage in ceasefire talks. Thank you for staying with us, Maurice. Now, you've actually spoken quite a bit about this, but how significant is the appointment of Togolese President Faure Gnassingbé as the mediator in these talks? What unique advantages does he bring to the table?
Well, it's kind of interesting. There is a head of state intrigue that's in play. You know, within the Congo itself, the former President Joseph Kabila has become a part of the equation, who's apparently said he's going to be re-entering the Congo. Yeah. But he's been out since 2023. But he's going to be re-entering from the east of the Congo. At least those are the reports that we're seeing in any case. And you know, Joseph Kabila, the head of the Congo River Alliance, Corneille Nangaa, is close to Joseph Kabila. It was he, Corneille Nangaa, and Joseph Kabila who orchestrated the presidency of Felix Tshisekedi in 2018. We didn't really win the elections, but Kabila and Nangaa thought he would be more pliable, along with regional leaders. Now, Faure is close to Kabila. They have relations. So that people some analysts indicate that may shift his how can I say, sympathies to the Congo River Alliance. But you know, that's like inside politics. I think the bigger issue is, can he succeed where João Lourenço did not succeed? And what we've seen to date, whether we're talking about the East African community, the Southern African Development Community, the African Union, that the African efforts have failed to advance or deliver any kind of results that would settle or put the conflict on a path to being settled. What we've seen is that, interestingly enough, the stronger action has been coming, and the more definitive actions have been coming from Rwanda's allies, like the United Kingdom, who's withheld aid, the United States, who've sanctioned the top-level Rwandan officials, and James Kabarebe, the European Union, who's sanctioned Rwandan officials and even a Rwandan mining company, from the G7, group of 7 nations, who said that Rwanda should withdraw, issued a declaration saying Rwanda should withdraw from the Congolese territory immediately. And of course, that I shared earlier, the audience may not have been able to hear me clearly, there is a resolution, UN resolution from the Security Council 2773 that was established and voted on February 21st, a unanimous 15-0 vote. We didn't even see that in the case with Israel, but as a case with Israel and Palestine, the case with Congo and Rwanda, there's a 15-0 unanimous vote, resolution by the permanent members and the 10 non-permanent members of the UN Security Council that says Rwandan soldiers should withdraw from Congolese territory immediately without any preconditions. This is what's been laid out by the global community. So with Faure being assigned to mediate the peace agreement, one would think that the Congolese government would insist that where the international community stands should be a point of departure for a dialogue, and really one would hope that they would insist that the Rwandan government adhere to the UN declaration, that 2773 that came out in February. I would think that would be a path on which we could see some kind of progress made. If that's not the case, it'd be hard to see what the Togolese president would be able to bring to the table that can advance peace and security in the east of the Congo.
All right, well, while we have our fingers crossed, what about the recent withdrawal of the M23 rebels, from Walikale? Some say that it seems to be a strategic move. What message do you think that this particular gesture sends to both the government and also the international community?
I don't think it sends anything. There's no message there. They've withdrawn and they've moved as they see fit. Goma is still occupied. Bukavu is still occupied. Swaths of territory in the east of Congo, almost the size of Rwanda, is still occupied. Parallel administrations are being set up, which is in Resolution 2773, calls for the dismantling of the parallel administration. Just over this weekend in Goma itself, there was gunfire and heavy artillery exchange, apparently between the M23 Rwandan soldiers and some Congolese soldiers in what they call the Wazalendo resistance forces. So that doesn't mean anything. The M23 and the Rwandan soldiers are still occupying Eastern Congo, still got Goma under occupation, still have Bukavu under occupation. So it means nothing, really.
All right, now, speaking of Bukavu, still being occupied, we know that in Bukavu itself, the local Wazalendo militia members allied with the Congolese army attempted a brief advance, before retreating and proposing the ceasefire to support peace negotiations. So can you tell us, how do such local militias, influence the broader conflict dynamics?
The interesting thing is, over the years, it's important for us to recall this is a 30-year war of aggression and plunder that we've seen from Congo's neighbors. This is not the first time. And on the front line of defending the land and defending the territory has been, the local groups. The extent to which Congo is a state that hasn't been, balkanized as yet, can be attributed to the local resistance. Before they were called the Mai Mais, and now they're called the Wazalendo, so-called patriots. So we've seen local groups in the absence of a robust state authority. We've seen that local people have had to take up arms to defend their community. So it is in this 30-year of history where the local groups have been at the forefront of protecting the territorial integrity of Congo that we have to look at the Wazalendo. Now, mind you, I think you can put a lot of responsibility on the Congolese government for not organizing in a way, its military in a way, paying its soldiers properly, structuring its military in a way to defend the entirety of the territory. And with that vacuum, we've seen local groups that have stepped up to fill the void.
Well, Maurice, let's quickly discuss, the European Union sanctions on M23 leader and also Rwandan army commanders. Do you think that such sanctions would impact the peace process and also the behavior of the rebel groups in any way?
Yeah, I think we have to look at history. This is not the first time. We have to keep reminding people that, because folks believe that, some people may believe that this is the first time. Rwandan soldiers and M23 occupied the city of Goma in 2012, right? In 2012, that was 13 years ago. So what we're seeing is a replay of what happened in 2012. And so there are measures that were taken by Rwanda's allies. Remember that almost half of Rwanda's budget, right, comes from Western donors. We're talking about the UK and Germany and Belgium, France, and US, right? They support Rwanda's budget. So what was done in 2012, the United States took the lead. They withheld aid from the Rwandan government. It wasn't a lot of money, but what it did is it triggered an avalanche of aid being withheld from the Rwandan government, to the tunes of tens of millions of dollars, right? So by the same token, we believe that that's in order today for the European Union, the UK, United States to withhold aid from the Rwandan government. Not as big on sanctions, really, because I don't think that will make a huge difference, but the withholding of aid. Remember, all along, Rwandan government has been rewarded as it is since it's begun its recent occupation of Eastern Congo back in 2022, right? The European Union gave in 2023 gave Rwanda 20 million euros. Again in 2024, 20 million euros for Rwanda's farming out its military to protect European corporate interests in Mozambique, Total Energies. Rwanda sent its soldiers there to protect their natural gas concessions there. So the European Union rewarded Rwanda for that, and then they entered into multi-$100 million critical minerals deal with the Rwandan government. So all along the occupation to this point, the European governments have been rewarding Rwanda as it advanced and occupied Eastern Congo. And now, due to global pressure, they're reversing course. They haven't done it as robustly as they did in 2012. I think if they did do it as robustly as they did in 2012, we will see similar results, where Rwanda actually lifted its occupation of Goma, where the M23 was dismantled, even though they retreated back into Rwanda and into Uganda. I think that effort certainly must be reinforced now as the situation is even more dire than it was in 2012.
Okay. Now, you did talk about, humanitarian aid and an avalanche of this aid being withdrawn from the government. Reports indicate that M23 conflict has caused nearly 3 out of every 4 displacements in DRC this year alone, leading to over 2 million internal displacements in just 6 months. How is this massive displacement affecting the country's humanitarian landscape? Because in addition, UNICEF also reported that thousands of children have been raped and sexually abused in Eastern Congo during January to February 2025 alone, comprising 35% to 45% of nearly 10,000 documented cases.
Yeah, it's a humanitarian disaster. I was in the camps there were 17 camps, displacement camps around Goma in the summer of 2024, and people were living in bestial conditions. Right, they were displaced from their villages as a result of the Rwandan-backed invasion and occupation. And UNICEF is absolutely on point, because in those camps, are the children and women. They're populated mainly by children and women. And really, over these 30 years, this has been a war against Congolese women and children. Hundreds of thousands of women have been systematically raped, to the point where even a Congolese doctor, Dr. Denis Mukwege, was awarded a Nobel Peace Prize for patching up women who had been raped. Of the 6 million people who perished, according to the International Rescue Committee, it was half of them are children under the age of 5. So the situation for children is dire. For women, the same. That's why in Resolution 2773, passed unanimously by the UN Security Council, they called for humanitarian quarter to be opened up, so that humanitarian support could get to the women and children who are in dire need of relief. You have local organizations, local faith institutions, local grassroots organizations who have taken up the mantle. They're providing food, they're providing water, in some cases shelter, giving women seeds so that they can plant something and grow some food. So the local community, again, is stepping up, and they're at the forefront of providing relief. But this, as you stated, we're talking about millions of people. So the situation is dire, and all the more reason why pressure needs to be put on the Rwandan government. The Rwandan government is a difference maker here. There is no M23 as we know it without the Rwandan government. So greater pressure must be put on the Rwandan government. I think African leaders can do more in applying pressure on Rwanda. They're reluctant. African leaders are reluctant to act against one of their own. But we're talking about innocent African women and children who are dying in the Congo unnecessarily. You know, part of the argument that the Rwandan government makes is like, oh, we're undertaking defensive measures to protect our borders. Do you know that over the past 30 years, right, Rwanda is talking about security with over 6 million Congolese dead, over 7 million Congolese internally displaced. That's about close to 13, 14 million Congolese, right? Yeah. That is paying this price. That's equivalent to the population of Rwanda. So is Rwanda and Paul Kagame telling Africans and the whole world that we have to sacrifice the size of the population of our own country so that we can be secure? Is that the option that we're going to accept as Africans, as members of the global community? I would say no. I would say no, and this needs to stop. And we know what it takes for it to stop. Sufficient pressure needs to be applied on the Rwandan government for it to withdraw its support of the M23. And if that's no peace talk or path, Rwanda or Nairobi is going to address that unless Rwanda does what the United Nations says. Immediate withdraw your troops, your soldiers, without any conditions. Cease your support of M23. Enter into a ceasefire agreement. Create a humanitarian corridor. So the roadmap is there. So going back to Faure of Togo, one would hope that he would take the lead from the UN Security Council on what they laid out as to what needs to be done to advance peace in the east of the Congo.
Okay. Now you talked about African leaders needing to do more, but the Wall Street Journal reports that Congo's neighbors are smuggling out its gold and mineral wealth. And also, we know that the Internal Displacement Monitoring Center reports that M23 conflict cost 2 million internal displacements in the first half of 2024. And Goma also hosts an estimated 1.7 million internally displaced persons due to renewed conflict. Now, how is the city and also neighboring countries coping with the influx? And what support systems do you think should be in place for these individuals?
Yeah, first and foremost, we said this in 2024. When we had come back from Goma, I say we meaning Friends of the Congo, that there's a need for immediate humanitarian intervention, right? And now, since the occupation of the cities, Goma and Bukavu, we've seen not only a cutoff of the humanitarian aid, but people who are escaping, putting pressure on neighboring countries. Burundi, for example, taking in thousands of Congolese displaced persons. So we just need to sound the alarms. The United Nations, the African Union should be on the forefront on demanding, the opening of a humanitarian corridor, demanding the ability to get, clean water and food and into the areas where people are displaced. So it's just like there needs to be moral leadership on the part of the African Union, because there's Africans that are dying. There's African women who are being raped, African children who are being executed. It's not, somehow we put it in the Congo and then we push it to the side. But we're talking about our fellow African women and children. So there absolutely needs to be greater leadership by the heads of state. We've seen the grassroots societies, young people throughout the continent rallying behind the Congo and calling for peace and stability in the region. And the African heads of state can take a note. When from the people. When the East African community and the Southern African Development Community gathered in Tanzania back in February, they didn't even mention Rwanda. how could you come together and not mention Rwanda? And we're so relieved that the world community, represented by the United Nations and the Security Council, tackled the matter right at the heart and called for the immediate withdrawal of Rwandan soldiers from Congolese territory without any conditions.
All right. Now, while we wrap up, let's have your final thoughts, especially on assurances that should be made to the affected civilian populations, regarding their safety and also the prospects for rebuilding if these peace talks prove successful.
Yeah, first of all, we should all make the priority, all be rallying around humanitarian relief for the Congolese people. Now, we focus a lot on Rwanda and the role Rwanda is playing, but the situation in the Congo and its local elites and its leadership, it's a weak leadership that really hasn't provided for the welfare of the masses of Congolese. We have still these structural issues that are in place where up to 70 million Congolese live on less than $2.15 a day. Where, meanwhile, the elite in Kinshasa, they're making $20,000 a month. We've seen that faith leaders from the Catholic Church and the Protestant Church, two largest contingents, faith contingents in the Congo, as a country that's 95% Christian. They've called, they're mobilized, traveling around the world and throughout Africa and regionally, calling for a social pact for peace in the Congo. There absolutely needs to be a restructuring of the political landscape where the Congolese people are prioritized. Remember, you talked about the minerals earlier.
Yeah.
The economist said there are about $24 trillion worth of minerals in the Congo, right? We're talking about a country that has, according to the Food and Agriculture Organization, has the capacity to feed the entire African continent almost twice over. We're in the midst of a green energy transition that's dependent upon natural resources to power this energy, especially cobalt. Congo produces 70% of the world's cobalt. So there's spectacular wealth in the country, but the leadership, mismanagement of the resources, the focus on just the elite and in Kinshasa, that has to fundamentally change if we're going to see any social, economic, security advances, irrespective of what how Rwanda acts, going forward. There's just deep structural problems that the local elites haven't addressed, and that they absolutely need to.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Maurice, for your time and for speaking to us on this. Maurice Carney, Executive Director, Friends of the Congo in Washington, D.C. Thank you once again.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us.